Good evening and welcome to India Matters on Friday night. Tonight, viewer, we are definitely not impressed. Nearly 3 months after the Pahalgam terror attack, which I covered from the ground in Kashmir, the United States under Donald Trump has just designated the Pakistan-sponsored terrorist group responsible, the Resistance Front, or TRF as they call themselves. They've been designated by Trump as a foreign terrorist organization. Now, for those unfamiliar, the TRF is a front outfit of Pakistan's Lashkar-e-Taiba, Pakistan's oldest and most blood-soaked export. On paper, this designation of TRF is a big diplomatic win for India, undoubtedly. FTO designation by the US State Department is no small deal. It's difficult to get there. It's supposed to choke funding, restrict movement, discourage transactions, create global stigma, and signal serious concern. In theory, this is the world's most powerful country helping take the oxygen out of a terrorist group that has just spilt innocent tourist blood in India and brought the two countries to the brink of all-out war under Operation Sindoor. But let's be honest, because I like calling out the BS here. TRF is now the 6th Pakistan-based terrorist group to be designated by the United States. That includes the TRF's mothership, the Lashkar, and the Jaish-e-Mohammed, which were both designated similarly way back in 2001, 24 years ago. You know what's happened since? Do I even need to tell you? Mumbai 26/11, Uri, Pathankot, Pulwama. Terror designations haven't stopped a single one of those mass terror attacks against India. Not a single one of them. So sure, there is some symbolic value to what Trump has done, and maybe some logistical pressure on these groups and the TRF at some small level, but it clearly doesn't move the needle. Because despite these designations as foreign terrorist organization, not one real punitive action has been taken by the US against the Pakistani deep state that continues to fund and to protect these terror groups. Let's not forget that the only time the US actually acted inside Pakistan was when it killed Osama bin Laden. And that wasn't because he was in Pakistan, it was because he killed Americans. India's pain doesn't quite get the same urgency, but we're okay with that because we understand it. And it's because for Washington, Pakistan is still a useful hedge against India's rise, against China's influence, against America's own irrelevance in South Asia. It suits them to keep Pakistan in play, even if it means tolerating its terror infrastructure. This isn't an emotional argument. It's a foreign relations reality that our brave diplomats are well aware of, and that India is more than understanding of. So forgive me for pointing out tonight the irony of so many journalists and media channels celebrating the US designation of the TRF as a terrorist group. It doesn't impress me one little bit. Because just weeks after hosting and flattering Pakistan's army chief, the man who literally holds the remote control to the ISI and its terror franchises, including the TRF, President Trump's government has now designated the TRF a foreign terrorist group. Is this counter-terror resolve, or just a token bone thrown India's way to soften the image of America that's otherwise cozying up to, let's face it, a terror state? Either way, I'm not holding my breath. The US record on Pakistan-based terrorism speaks for itself, and it says, talk loudly, do not very much. Now let me tell you what designating a terror group actually means. What does designation do to a terrorist group? Let's tell you. Well, it is part of declaring under an executive order number 13224, identifies groups as threats to US security and applies to foreign terrorist organizations and individuals. Remember, this is for the TRF. There are legal and financial implications. All US-based assets are frozen. US persons are barred from aiding the group, criminal penalties for material support. This is all obvious stuff, right? Then there's symbolic power, sends a strong diplomatic message, delegitimizes the group on the global stage, and can isolate them from financial systems, getting donations and funding and that kind of thing. Does it lead to action, however, is the crucial question. Well, in my mind, the answer, of course, is not very much. The official answer is not always, because a military response is not always required. Like I said, when has the US actually acted on these so-called designations? It depends on strategic interests and alliances. Example, the IRGC in Iran designated in 2019, and there were strikes only in 2025. Impact beyond the US, allies may follow with their own sanctions, can pressure host nations, example Pakistan, but enforcement is often completely limited abroad. So, as you can see, designating a terror group as a terror group is usually just symbolic. Now, is it a game changer or is it eyewash? Let me leave you with some thoughts and some questions. All designated terror chiefs of all the terror groups that the United States has designated as a terror group in Pakistan are all still alive. The US may designate groups, but not one top leader has been eliminated. They're thriving in Pakistan. It's still funding and sheltering them despite FATF pressure. Terror financiers operate openly. There has been no known crackdown. Designation doesn't always mean action. Statements galore, zero ground impact, no military, economic or legal follow-through. Terror camps are still very much active in POK. Satellite imagery and intelligence confirms launchpads still running under ISI oversight. The ISI, which is the fountainhead of all this terror, is still very much calling the shots. Their boss was in the United States being wined and dined by Trump. ISI operatives are embedded in these groups. The US knows it, but it doesn't act. But we understand that there is nothing surprising or ironic about it. Asim Munir gets a lunch with the US president weeks after the Pahalgam terror attack because he's nominated Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. US arms aid continues inside Pakistan, billions, no extraditions, only lip service. Designations are used as a lever and not a principle. So India may be placated here. We may look at this in some way as a diplomatic victory, but this does not stop the terror groups. That is absolutely clear. Joining us live now is Rajesh Narwal, the father of young Indian Navy officer Lieutenant Vinay Narwal. He was only 26 years old and was one of the victims of the TRF terror in Pahalgam almost 3 months ago. Rajesh ji, pranam. हमसे बात करने के लिए बहुत धन्यवाद राजेश जी. आज एक बहुत अहम कदम उठाया गया है यूएस की तरफ से, लेकिन मैं पहले आपसे पूछना चाहूँगा राजेश जी कि आप कैसे हैं, आपके परिवार के लोग कैसे हैं, आशा जी कैसी हैं, हिमांशी जी कैसी हैं, बताइए.
शिव जी, हम कैसे हैं ये आपके कैमरे के सामने है तो बात अलग है, अदरवाइज हम कैसे हैं वो जस्ट इमेजिन कर सकते हो आप कि राउंड तक लोग कभी वो चेहरा सामने से नहीं जाता है. हम सभी लोग अब तक ट्रॉमा में हैं. सिचुएशन यहाँ तक हो जाती है कि मेरे पेरेंट्स हैं 80 इयर्स के, मम्मी और पापा
जी,
बिटिया छोटी है और मेरी वाइफ और मासी. मैं उनके सामने रो भी नहीं पाता हूँ, अपने आप को एक्सप्रेस भी नहीं कर पाता हूँ. मुझे मजबूत दिखना पड़ता है उनके सामने कि किसी तरह उनको लगे कि ये मजबूत है, हमें संभाल लेगा, ठीक है, किसी तरह परिवार चलाना है. मेंटल स्टेट किसी का भी ठीक नहीं है और चल रही है जिंदगी, धीरे धीरे होगा और भगवान पे भरोसा है. बट स्टिल ऑल ऑफ अस आर इन ट्रॉमेटिक कंडीशन में है, स्टेट ऑफ माइंड नहीं है. इतने दिन हो गए आज तक, भूल तो सकते ही नहीं है बट टोटली ब्लैकआउट है दिमाग ना. नींद नहीं आती है किसी को भी, 2-3 घंटे से ज्यादा कोई नहीं सो पाता है. साइकाट्रिस्ट के पास जाते हैं तो दवाइयां दे देते हैं, वो भी कोई इलाज नहीं है, दूसरी बीमारियां लग गई. छोटी मोटी, तो सब हम कैसे हैं, तो स्थिति ये है।
राजेश जी, हम इमेजिन भी नहीं कर सकते हैं, हम इमेजिन भी नहीं कर सकते हैं कि आप और आपने, आपके परिवार ने क्या एक्सपीरियंस किया है इन 3 महीनों में। इसलिए मेरा पहला सवाल वो था। लेकिन जैसे आप जानते ही हैं कि ऑपरेशन सिंदूर हुआ है, उसके बाद आज अमेरिका की तरफ से एक स्टेप लिया हुआ है। उन्होंने द रेजिस्टेंस फ्रंट, जो एक्चुअली लश्कर ए तैयबा के एक फ्रंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, एक टेररिस्ट संगठन है, उनको डेजिग्नेट किया है कि एक फॉरेन टेररिस्ट ग्रुप है। इसको आप कैसे देखते हैं राजेश जी?
मैं इसको इस तरह से देख सकता हूँ कि ये जो स्टेप लिया है यूएस गवर्नमेंट ने, ऐसा नहीं है कि आज एक ही रात में उन्होंने ले लिया। अब टीआरएफ है, द रेजिस्टेंट फ्रंट जो है, ये 2019 में इन्होंने बनाया था, जब जेएंडके से 370 हटाई थी हम लोगों ने, हमारी सरकार ने। तो ये उसका मुखौटा है, उसकी शैडो है ये
जी।
जो एक्ट वो करता था, जिस तरह की टेररिस्ट एक्टिविटीज उसकी थी, उस दिन से ही इसने 20 बार हम पे अटैक किया है, हमारे जवानों पर, पैरामिलिट्री फोर्सेस की टुकड़ियों पर, कानवाइज पर, और हमारे सिटीजन्स पर। एक पीछे लॉयर थे वहां पर, उनको भी इन्होंने किया। और अभी 22 अप्रैल का, मैं पर्सनली तो उसका विक्टिम मैं हूं, तो उसको तो पूरा दुनिया, पूरा ग्लोब नहीं भूल सकता कि किस तरह से उन्होंने और किस सोच के साथ उस दुर्घटना को अंजाम दिया, जिसमें मेरा बेटा भी, लेफ्टिनेंट विनय नरवाल, जो यंगेस्ट था, 5 दिन पहले उसकी शादी हुई थी, वो हमने खोया है। तो ऐसे टेररिस्ट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, वो चाहे यहाँ पर है, इंडिया में है, हमारे राष्ट्र में है, या इस दुनिया में किसी भी जगह, किसी भी देश में, किसी भी कोने में है, उन पर सैंक्शंस ये नहीं कि भाई इस पर लगा दी तो हमारा काम हो गया। मैंने कहा है कि इस तरह के ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जिनकी विचारधारा इस तरह की है, समाज को बिखेरने का, उनमें दहशतगर्दी फैलाने का, उनको नुकसान पहुंचाने की जिसकी मंशा है, ऐसी विचारधारा है, वो कहीं पर भी है इस ग्लोब पर, उन सब पे ना केवल सैंक्शंस लगाई जाए, और केवल मात्र हमारे राष्ट्र द्वारा या यूएसए द्वारा लगाई जाए। इसके लिए तो ग्लोब में जितने भी हमारी कंट्रीज हैं, जितनी भी हमारी सरकारें हैं, हम सबको लामबंद हो करके और उन पर ना केवल सैंक्शन लगाया जाए। जब हम उनकी फोटोज देख लेते हैं, उनको आइडेंटिफाई कर लेते हैं कि भी इसका ये सरगना है, इसका ये सरगना है, ये काम करता है, इसकी फंडिंग ये करता है, इसकी फंडिंग फलाना कंट्री करता है, इसकी फंडिंग वहां से आती है, वो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन करता है, तो हमें पहचान तो है उनकी। तो उनको तो उनके ऊपर ऐसा एक्शन होना चाहिए कि वो सांस ना लें इस दुनिया में, क्योंकि ये दुनिया उन लोगों के लिए नहीं है। उनको तो भट्ठी जो होती है ना, फर्नेस होती है, फर्नेस में डाल देना चाहिए, और उनके लिए इस धरती पर कोई जगह नहीं है। मात्र सैंक्शन लगाने से कुछ नहीं होगा। ये दुख और दर्द वो जानता है जिस तन लागे वो तन जाने, कि हम कैसे जी रहे हैं, आने वाली जिंदगी कैसे कटेगी, कैसे हम जिएंगे। तो ये चैलेंजेस किस तरह के, उस पेन के साथ, उस ग्रीफ के साथ जीना, तो ये इम्पॉसिबल है एकदम से। इसको सोच करके रूह कांप जाती है, जब याद करते पूरा बॉडी पेन करती है। तो इन लोगों को बख्शा नहीं जाना चाहिए, और खाली ये नहीं कि इनको सजा दे दी, इनको पकड़ लिया, ये कर लिया। इनको पकड़ो और खत्म करो, और दुनिया में इनके लिए कोई जगह नहीं। और ये जो काम किया है यूएस ने, ऐसा भी नहीं मैं कहता कि ये एक दिन में हो गया। हमारी सरकार ने, आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री महोदय ने, हमारे विदेश मंत्री जयशंकर प्रसाद जी ने वैश्विक स्तर पर इस बात को रखा। पहलगांव हत्याकांड के बाद तो इसके लिए ये दिन रात से लगे हुए थे, और वैश्विक स्तर पर इस बात को रखा गया, वैश्विक पटल पर रखा गया जिसको सब लोगों ने संज्ञान में लिया। अभी तो ये शुरुआत है कि यूएस ने सैंक्शन लगाई है। जो भी हमारी और दूसरी महाशक्तियां हैं वो सभी इस पर सैंक्शन लगाएंगी और इनके खिलाफ एक्शन लेंगी। और इसमें मैं एक जरूर कहना चाहूंगा अपनी तरफ से, ये मेरी पर्सनल ओपिनियन है। इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन होते हैं इस तरह के कि टेररिस्ट एक्टिविटी करने वाले जो भी मतलब एंटिटीज होती हैं उनको कैसे करना है, क्रश करना है। पर इसके लिए तो बिल्कुल एकदम स्पेशलाइज होना चाहिए। आइडेंटिफाई किया, एक टीम अलग है, वो जाए और उनको खत्म। वो कहीं पर भी है, चाहे पाकिस्तान में है, इंडिया में है, बांग्लादेश में है, यूएस में है, ईरान में है, इराक, किसी भी जगह दुनिया में है, उनके लिए कोई जगह दुनिया में नहीं होनी चाहिए। क्योंकि पेन ऐसी है ये कि जिसको लगती है उसको उस पेन का पता है। तो इसने तो ये बहुत ही सराहनीय कार्य किया है उन्होंने, इस पर सैंक्शंस लगाई, ये शुरुआत है।
राजेश जी, क्या आपको लगता है कि ये एंटी टेरर इशू में यूएस की तरफ से कहीं ना कहीं एक दोहरा मापदंड भी है, एक डबल स्टैंडर्ड भी है? क्योंकि एक तरफ से सैंक्शन कर रहे हैं ऐसे संगठनों को, लश्कर तैयबा जो एक एक्चुअल फ्रंट, एक्चुअल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, टीआरएफ तो सिर्फ एक मुखौटा है, जैसे आपने बिल्कुल सही बताया। उनको डेजिग्नेट किया था 2001 में, 25 साल पहले उनको डेजिग्नेट किया था, और उनके जो नेता हैं वो तो खुलेआम घूम रहे हैं पाकिस्तान में, उनके खिलाफ तो कुछ हुआ नहीं है, एलईटी अभी भी जारी है।
तो
क्या आपको लगता है कि एक डबल स्टैंडर्ड है इसमें? ट्रंप तो आसिम मुनीर के साथ खाना खाते भी हैं।
नहीं, ऐसा मैं देखो उस लेवल की बातें मैं नहीं कह सकता, ना उस पर मैं कोई कमेंट ऑफर कर सकता हूँ। आसिफ मुनीर की बात है, आसिफ मुनीर को उस दिन पता चले कि जिस दिन उसका बेटा या बिटिया इस तरह से विक्टिमाइज हो, टेररिस्ट अटैक में वो मारे जाए, आसिफ मुनीर या आसिफ मुनीर जैसा कोई भी, उसकी आंख तभी खुलेगी, तब उसको पता चलेगा कितनी पेन होती है। या मेरे हाथ में यदि मैं कहूं, मैं इतना बड़ा नहीं हूं, मैं मेरे हाथ में दे वो शूट करने के लिए, और मैं उसके बेटे को मारूं या बिटिया को मारूं, तब उसको पता चलेगा कितनी पेन होती है। इसमें ऐसा नहीं कि आसिफ मुनीर के साथ खाना खाते ट्रम्प साहब क्या करते हैं। ठीक है, एक तरीका होता है सरकारों का काम करने का, उससे बातचीत की होगी, पूछा होगा कहीं ना कहीं, उसके बाद उन्होंने मीटिंगें की होगी, लगा होगा उनको कि यस इस पे सैंक्शन लगानी चाहिए, तो सरकार ने, यूएसए सरकार ने लगाई है। तो दोहरे मापदंड के बारे में मैं नहीं कह सकता, बट हाँ इतना जरूर है कि जिसको लगती है जानता वही है। यदि कोई भी है, अभी हमने आसिफ मुनीर का नाम लिया, यदि इसकी तरह की कोई और भी है, उसके घर में चोट लगे तो पता लगता है उसको कि इसको शायद देनी चाहिए इन चीजों को, या इनको कर्ब करना चाहिए, क्रश करना चाहिए।
राजेश जी, आखिरी सवाल, डिप्लोमेसी के लेवल पर जो डेजिग्नेट किया गया है टीआरएफ को, ये एक विक्ट्री माना जा रहा है अभी, और वो है भी, क्योंकि इंडिया ने काफ़ी एफर्ट्स लगाए हैं इसमें, मेंबर्स ऑफ पार्लियामेंट को भेजे थे यूएस, और इसको एक लेवल में देखा जा सकता है कि एक डिप्लोमेटिक विक्ट्री है। क्या आप एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं कि ये डिप्लोमेटिक विक्ट्री को लेकर कुछ एक्शन आगे होना चाहिए टीआरएफ के खिलाफ, या सिर्फ ये नहीं तो सिर्फ ये एक पेपर वर्क या एक लीगल पेपर वर्क रह जाएगा, एक्शन लेना चाहिए अब?
हाँ सर, देखो मैं भी इंटरनेशनल डिप्लोमेसी का स्टूडेंट रहा हूँ अपने टाइम में, तो मैंने पढ़ा है। तो ये डिप्लोमेटिक विक्ट्री तो हमारी है ही, और मात्र इस पे सैंक्शन लगाया गया है, यहाँ तक ये बात नहीं रुकेगी। इन चीजों में टाइम लगता है, और इनके अगेंस्ट डेफिनेटली एक्शन होगा, डेफिनेटली होगा, और यूएस ही लेगा, और हम तो ले ही रहे हैं। हमारी सरकार तो बहुत ही सेंसिटाइज है ना, और सेंसिटिव है इन मामलों में, बहुत गंभीरता के साथ ले रही है। तो एक्शन तो होगा, पर हमें पेशेंस रखने की जरूरत है, डेफिनेट एक्शन होगा।
आखिरी सवाल राजेश जी, विनय सिर्फ 26 साल के थे, वो एक सैनिक थे, एक ऑफिसर थे इंडियन नेवी में। सिर्फ 3 महीने बीत गए हैं राजेश जी, और जैसे मैंने पहले ही बताया, हम इमेजिन भी नहीं कर सकते कि आपका परिवार ने कैसे गुजारा है ये 3 महीने। आप विनय को कैसे याद करते हैं? और मैं ये सिर्फ डायरेक्टली आपसे पूछ रहा हूं क्योंकि पूरा देश आपको देख रहा है, सुन रहा है आज।
अब जहां तक विनय को याद करने की बात है, तो मैंने कहा कि 24 घंटे पट्टा वो दिमाग से निकलता ही नहीं है। सुबह उठता हूं तो वही दिखता है, बट उसको जिस ढंग से मैं याद करता हूँ वो बचपन से ही एक हीरोइक पर्सनालिटी रहा है। कभी उसके मन में कभी डर नाम की चीज नहीं थी। हमेशा ही पता नहीं क्यों छोटा सा बच्चा था तब से ही उसको फौज की गाड़ियां देखने में, फौजी वर्दी देखने में, फौजियों को देखने में तो बड़ी खुशी मिलती थी। मुझे कई बार ले जाते, मेरा घर सड़क के सामने ही है NH1 पे, तो गाड़ियां दिखती थी तो पार्क में घूम रहे होते, पापा कहता चलो सड़क पे चलते देख के आएंगे। तो हीरोइक पर्सनालिटीज थी उसमें और लीडरशिप क्वालिटीज थी उस बच्चे में, और बहुत ही बहादुर और एक नेक इंसान रहा है। मेरे मम्मी पापा ने, मैंने, वाइफ ने, हमारा एक इकलौता बच्चा है, तो हम चारों की 30 साल की मेहनत उसके साथ थी, 30 साल की
जी।
उसके लिए सबसे बड़ा सबक हमने सिखाया उसको, पर्टिकुलरली मैंने, कि कभी जिंदगी में जो आपकी आत्मा गवाही ना दे, विवेक गवाही ना दे, वो काम नहीं करना है और सच बोलना है। सच बोल तो कभी आपको डर नहीं लगेगा। और ठीक उसी तरह उसने अपना जितने भी दिन इस दुनिया में भगवान ने उसको दिए उसी ढंग से जिया, बिंदास होके जिया। एक हीरोइक पर्सनालिटी है मेरे लिए और आज मेरा हीरो है, मेरा हीरो।
राजेश जी, विनय पूरा देश के लिए एक हीरो है और मैं बिल्कुल हेजिटेट नहीं करता हूं जब मैं बोलता हूं आपको कि पूरा देश की तरफ से आपके परिवार, आपको हम धन्यवाद करते हैं विनय का सेवा और सैक्रिफाइस, कुर्बानी के लिए। और हम विनय को कभी नहीं भूलेंगे। ये जो कार्रवाई हो रही है यूएस की तरफ से, इंडियन सरकार की तरफ से, हम उस पर अटेंशन जारी रखेंगे NDTV की तरफ से। और हमसे आज इस हेडलाइन को लेकर बात करने के लिए बहुत धन्यवाद राजेश जी, थैंक यू। So are these terror groups, and you just heard Rajesh Narwal, who actually lost his son to TRF, the organization that's been designated a terrorist group by the Trump administration. The question that obviously arises is, will a US label stop a Pulwama 2.0, or does it just look good for India-US relations? Like I said, has India just received a cosmetic, symbolic gesture from the United States? Number two, they've been designated today. Will it be operational tomorrow? Who's tracking the ground operations? Will the United States attack the TRF? Is ISI still funding them? Is Washington blind to that? Or is this just strategic ambiguity at play? Why no sanctions on Pakistan itself? They're the ones sponsoring this terror group. The puppet is banned, but the puppeteer isn't. Would the TRF even exist without the LET's leash? LET finds mention in this designation, but then why not call out the actual source and act against it? They've been designated since 2001. Why are UN resolutions still stalled? Designate one day, dilute in Geneva the next. Do you know Pakistan is now co-chair of an anti-terror panel in the United Nations? Where's the action beyond the acronyms? You've got the FATF, now you've got Foreign Terror Organization, there's the SDGT, and yet no boots, no bans, no blockades, nothing really happens to these terror groups. Why do the TRF's handlers still tweet and use social media so freely? The TRF has just put out something on social media right now reacting to Trump. Designated groups don't get a digital detox. They've not been cleansed from the internet. When will the US walk the talk? Designation is ink, action is impact. Or do we just make our peace with the fact that this is symbolic, it doesn't really mean very much, it makes everyone feel good for the India-US relationship, but nothing really happens to the terrorists themselves. Joining me now to understand this a little better, Glenn Carl is ex-Deputy National Intelligence Officer for Transnational Threats. He's been a career CIA officer as well. Also with me is Lieutenant General KJS Dhillon. It was under his stewardship of the 15 Corps in Srinagar that the TRF actually came about. General Dhillon, I'll start this off with you. How do you read the designation of the TRF as a terrorist group? This is a group that became active while you headed the 15 Corps in Srinagar.
Good evening, Shiv, and good evening to the fellow panelists and your viewers. Yes, it was after the abrogation of Article 370 in August 2019, when I was the Corps Commander in Kashmir. Somewhere in the last quarter of the 2019, September, October, when the TRF, the Resistance Front, first time this name appeared online. It appeared on internet, various social media handles, and then it started claiming all the actions of Lashkar-e-Taiba. There are no trace of TRF on ground. There are no cadre of TRF on ground. All the cadres, all the actions were by Lashkar-e-Taiba. And as you brought out earlier, Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed were banned more than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So this ban, although a great victory for Indian diplomacy and Indian efforts, visibly, I compliment everyone who is behind this. But banning of Lashkar-e-Taiba did not stop Lashkar-e-Taiba from operating from Pakistan.
Yeah.
Freezing of their bank accounts did not stop Lashkar-e-Taiba from getting funds, all sitting at home in Pakistan. Banning of Lashkar-e-Taiba did not stop their leaders from making public appearances and spewing venom against India and other countries in Pakistan. Similarly, banning of TRF now will have no impact. Yesterday it was Lashkar-e-Taiba, today it is TRF, tomorrow they will come up with some other name, XYZ.
Yeah.
The activities, the terror acts of Lashkar-e-Taiba from Pakistan will continue unabated unless the Lashkar-e-Taiba itself is destroyed, unless Pakistan is named a terrorist state, and all the sanctions which the world knows are put against Pakistan for funding, supporting, organizing, and executing terror acts across the world. So this ban, although very good diplomatic win, but on ground, it would mean nothing unless backed by solid proof.
And so far there has been no, follow-up action, as it were, from the United States side. It's, it's only India that has acted against the Lashkar-e-Taiba, the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the TRF. Glenn Carl, should India see this as anything more than diplomatic niceties? After all, the Lashkar-e-Taiba, which is the mothership of the TRF, which has been so designated today, has been on since 2001, and it hasn't really stopped that terror group either.
Yeah. Hi, thank you for having me. Good to see you again. I think the way you're framing this actually is unfortunate in that it's darker than the reality. Not that the reality of the designation brings the solution to the problem whatsoever. However, it is a step which has some effect. What will happen from the U.S. perspective is not that now, having designated TRF as a terrorist organization, all of a sudden the United States is going to start sending B-2 bombers wherever we think there's a member. But it does order and enable American officials to around the world to shut down any TRF related financing activity. It is like a brick in a wall. So they can still go around the wall, but it does make life a little harder and a little more constricted for TRF itself. I disagree with another thing, which I think you'll actually agree with, when you said that it really is Lashkar-e-Taiba that's the, I forget the phrase you used, but the center of the problem rather than TRF. I would disagree and say that it's the ISI and the Pakistani government. No one is under any illusions about this. And I immediately thought, when the TRF came up with its somewhat clever, more secular approach to being terrorists, somehow to mask their activities and make them more acceptable, if that's conceivable, that was not the way that individuals in Kashmir or anywhere else will think, but rather an intelligence service in the ISI in this instance. So it is a step. Now, does it solve the problem? Not at all. But it's not just window dressing to make India feel that the U.S. has done something. It's not an empty step for the United States to take. It is one step when there need to be 1,000.
General Dillon, what would you say to that? Glenn Carl says it isn't just window dressing, it's more than what I am projecting it as. I said it was just a diplomatic nicety, or that the US is trying to placate India after whining and dining Asim Munir just a few weeks after Operation Sindoor. Would you see it as more than window dressing? What would the US need to do in order to demonstrate that it's not window dressing?
Shiv, although I agree with you, and I would like to agree with Glenn also, but the fact of the matter is in today's real world, no one is going to come and fight your battle.
Yeah.
If you expect United States of America or the United Nations or anyone else to come and sort out the terror problems in the sub-region, I think we are mistaken. We have to understand it is a problem which is emanating from Pakistan. We have carried out phase 1 under Operation Sindoor and hit the targets where they were lying, in spite of sanctions of the world. So we need to fight our own battles. We need to make ourselves strong. We need to make ourselves assertive. And we need to be very clear, this and no more. And I would tend to agree that, okay, it's a diplomatic victory. It's a good thing to start with. And it's much better than the UN sanction. United States sanction or United States declaring a terrorist organization is much more than the United Nations doing it. There is a little punch here with the United States doing it. And although they do it for their own homeland security, because they see this organization tomorrow becoming so big that they can hit the US homeland also. Having said that, we should be very clear, it is our battle and we only have to fight it.
Yeah.
Everyone will come and say, very nice, good, well done. And since we are the 4th largest economy, we are 1/6 of the world in population, by extension as market. We are the very mighty military, and we are the world's largest democracy. When we take action as Operation Sindoor, only thing which will happen is people will not say that you are an aggressor, because we are a force to reckon with. Moment we become a bigger force, the voices will go down even further. But the fact remains, we need to be strong as a nation to destroy our enemies inside or outside.
I tend to completely agree with that. And Glenn Carl, there is a level of reality and, not many expectations from the Indian side as far as actions against Pakistan is concerned. There are no emotions really there. I think there's a level of understanding and awareness of what this dynamic it really is all about. But would you also agree with that in light of the recent military actions under Operation Sindoor, India has demonstrated that all of these diplomatic things and the step taken like this designation will happen, but ultimately it is for India to take these actions against these terror groups as it has recently?
Of course. It's quite rare that a nation will fight another nation's battles for it.
Yeah.
And Lashkar-e-Taiba and TRF and the whole Kashmir issue is India's problem more than anyone's. The United States is concerned because war is always a danger in creating instability and all sorts of consequences therefrom that might affect the United States. But it really is India's problem, of course. But that brings us back to another actually concrete practical benefit. It's hard to say benefit in a terrorist issue, but step that is a consequence of the American designation. If I were serving in a foreign country still, say I were in Bolivia, which Bolivia has nothing to do with the United States Islamic terrorism or India. Nonetheless, if I'm there, now that TRF has been designated, I will have to pay attention to any individual or action that comes across my work consciousness that relates to TRF and take steps against it. And the U.S. does work closely, perhaps not as closely as either side would like, I don't know anymore, but with RAW, with Indian intelligence.
Yes.
And we certainly would share information that we obtained about TRF now that it has been designated. If ever TRF were crazy enough to pick a fight with the United States, then it would change, because just as the general said, then it becomes our problem.
Yeah.
But right now, it frankly is not, except in the larger sense, two ways very important. One, Islamic terrorism is destabilizing for everyone and a danger. And two, the issue of a virtual state sponsor of terrorism, Pakistan, is a huge dilemma. And the frustration of the Indians is that the United States hasn't so designated Pakistan, but then there are even larger issues which always constrain, always the United States, which is what Pakistan does with China, what Pakistan does with the United States, and can Pakistan continue as a more or less functional, non-Islamically jihadist state? And that outweighs, unfortunately, for the victims, what TRF might do in Kashmir to Indians.
I have 30 seconds left. I will give it to General Dillon. General Dillon also retired as director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Following from what Glenn Carl said, it is possible, would you say, General Dillon, that this designation of the TRF could mean some kind of intelligence sharing from the United States as far as the TRF is concerned?
Shiv, I agree with what Glenn is saying, but we have to understand one thing. Declaration aside, intentions matter.
Yeah.
If you are a well-intended person towards India, this can be used very, very aggressively and very, very positively. If the intention is to let it lie, just because Iran problem is now over and Pakistan is not immediately required in terms of air bases or airspace to tackle Iran from the eastern side, and when that was required, Asim Munir was called for lunch.
Yeah.
Now that problem is over, now some military hardware has to be sold, now the TRF has been designated. So one has to read the intentions very clearly. This is a very good tool if it is well-meaning and well-intended to follow it up.
General Tiny Dillon and Glenn Carl, always a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time here on this quick chat on the TRF being designated by the Trump administration.